Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving deep into a battle that's practically legendary. I mean, the battle on the ice.
Yeah.
It's so iconic. You'd think, it would be well documented,
Yeah.
but it's actually shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy surrounding its origins and how this clash really impacted the balance of power between Eastern and Western Christianity. This is a big one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like medieval Game of Thrones unfolding before us.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be examining three key clashes that sort of led up to the main event.
Right.
We've got the Battle of the Neva, the Izborsk and Pskov campaign, and the Votia campaign. We're putting together a puzzle, basically.
Yeah, like a historical puzzle. Each one of these events is going to add a layer of complexity to the story.
Yeah.
Showing the shifting alliances, the power struggles that defined the region at the time.
So let's start with the Battle of the Neva, 1240. This is where this young Prince Alexander Nevsky first shows up. Now, this battle is mainly mentioned in Russian sources, leading some historians to question if it even happened, the way it's been described.
You know, it's interesting how certain events just become embedded in a nation's historical narrative.
Sure.
Even if the evidence is debated.
Exactly. And to add even more intrigue, the Swedish advance might have been spurred by a papal call for a crusade.
Interesting.
Adding like a religious dimension to this whole conflict.
Yeah, they weren't just interested in like territorial expansion. They were potentially responding to this call to spread Christianity.
Of course.
Highlighting those religious tensions at the time.
And we can't forget about like the economic factors, right? I mean, Novgorod
Of course, yeah.
was this major trading hub. They had a lot to lose.
Huge.
Their fur trade and their control over the Gulf of Finland
Right.
was essential to their prosperity.
They were fiercely protective of their economic interests.
Right.
Any threat to their access to the Baltic Sea would have been met with resistance. So whether or not this clash on the Neva was like this massive battle or a small skirmish, it really set the stage for Alexander Nevsky's rise.
Totally. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. And now let's move on to the Izborsk and Pskov campaign of 1240. This is where things get really interesting.
This is where it gets good.
Yeah.
This campaign really highlights the tangled web of relationships in the region.
Oh.
We've got Novgorod, we've got the Estonians and those German Livonian forces all vying for power.
It's like who's allied with who.
Right.
And then it gets even more complicated because the Estonians, who are often at odds with Novgorod, sometimes team up with them against the Crusaders.
Oh, yeah?
So what's going on there?
Right. It's like, what are their motivations?
Yeah.
This is a good reminder that these medieval alliances were very fluid, very driven by pragmatic considerations.
Right.
The enemy of your enemy is sometimes your friend.
Yeah.
Even if it's temporary.
Absolutely. And then we also have the capture of Tartu in 1224 by the Livonian Brothers of the Sword, which is now in Estonia.
Okay.
And this was a really important city.
Hugely important.
Strategically.
Yes.
And its capture just really marked a turning point in the region's power dynamics.
Absolutely. The fall of Tartu really shifted the balance of power.
Yeah.
In favor of that Livonian order, and it would have had huge consequences for the surrounding territories, including Novgorod.
To make things even more complicated, there are even family ties between these opposing factions.
Really?
So a Scovian prince's daughter actually married into a prominent German Livonian family.
Wow. Blurring the lines between enemy and kin.
Yeah. What does that tell us about how these conflicts played out on a personal level?
Right. It really challenges our modern notion of clear-cut divisions between warring sides.
Yeah.
These family connections highlight the complexities of medieval politics, where personal relationships could intersect with strategic alliances.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Right.
The level of intrigue and interconnectedness.
Oh, yeah.
All right, you ready for the third piece of this medieval puzzle?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. The Votia campaign of 1240 to 1241.
Okay.
This is where things get even more interesting. The stakes are even higher now. This is considered a potential true crusade.
Wow.
Aimed at converting the Vochashims to Christianity.
So who are the Vochids?
They're a Finnic tribe. And this raises a crucial question.
Okay.
What was the exact relationship between Vocha and Novgorod?
Right.
Were the Votians tributaries to Novgorod?
Meaning they paid tribute in exchange for protection.
Exactly, because if Vocha was under Novgorod's protection,
Yeah.
then the Sword Brothers and Bishop Henry, who led this campaign, were essentially walking into a hornet's nest.
Yeah, it's almost as if they were intentionally provoking Novgorod.
Yeah, and it backfired.
Mm-hmm.
Novgorod, despite being delayed by some internal strife, they actually had to recall young Alexander Nevsky,
Oh, wow.
whom they'd previously exiled, to lead their forces.
They needed him.
Yeah, they responded with force.
It speaks to the severity of the threat that they were willing to set aside their internal disputes and turn to a leader that they had previously rejected.
And he was the best they had.
Right.
So with Alexander back in charge, the stage was set for a showdown with the Teutonic Knights.
Okay.
But before we get to the epic battle on the ice, there's one more crucial event to unpack.
All right. What is?
Alexander's successful recapture of Vochia and Pskov. This victory really shifted the momentum in favor of Novgorod, but the Teutonic Knights weren't just going to give up.
Well, of course not.
They counterattacked and defeated a Novgorodian detachment just south of Dorpat.
Okay.
And this defeat forced Alexander to, rethink his approach.
Yeah.
He needed to find a way to level the playing field.
He needed a new strategy.
And what better place to do that than a frozen lake?
No, here we go.
This is it, Lake Peipus. This is where it all goes down.
Yep.
It's a setting that's as iconic as the battle itself. But before we get into the details of that clash, let's take a quick look at the forces involved.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we're talking April 5th, 1242.
Okay.
Frozen surface of Lake Peipus.
Wow.
I mean, just imagine, a landscape as harsh and unforgiving as the battle that's about to unfold.
Yeah, I can practically hear the ice creaking under the weight of all those armies.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Livonian forces, they were a pretty mixed bag, right?
They were a mixed bag.
I mean, they had knights, of course, but also some local militia.
Right.
And even some Estonian allies.
Yeah, it was a very diverse force.
Yeah.
Reflecting that complex web of alliances we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And on the Novgorodian side,
yeah,
you've got Prince Alexander Nevsky's seasoned warriors.
Of course.
Bolstered by local levies.
Right. Essentially, troops raised from the local population.
So both sides were really fighting for control of this, super strategically vital region.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the actual fighting on the ice, the sources seem to paint a pretty chaotic picture. What can you tell us about, how the battle actually unfolded?
Well, one thing we know for sure is that Alexander Nevsky, he employed his signature tactic.
Oh,
the pincer movement.
The pincer movement.
Essentially, he used his forces to encircle the enemy.
Right.
Attacking from both sides.
Classic military strategy.
Oh, yeah. Still used today. In different forms, of course.
So how did that play out on the ice of Lake Peipus?
It seems to have been very effective.
Okay.
The Teutonic Knights, known for, their heavy armor and disciplined formations,
right,
they were basically caught in a trap. Their advance halted.
Wow.
I mean, just imagine, the chaos,
yeah,
the clash of steel on steel.
Oh, man.
The desperate struggle for survival on that frozen battlefield.
It must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
And to add to the drama, some accounts even describe Livonian troops falling through the ice.
Oh, wow.
The weight of their armor proving too much.
Yeah, the ice itself became a factor in the battle, adding another layer of danger to this already perilous situation.
Right.
Now, whether or not those accounts are entirely accurate is debatable.
Sure.
But they certainly add to that dramatic imagery.
A battle won and lost on the landscape itself.
Yeah.
So Alexander's forces, they won the day.
Right.
What happened to the defeated Livonian troops?
Well, some sources describe fleeing knights being chased across the ice.
Oh, wow.
With some meeting a very chilling end in those icy waters.
Yeah.
Again, the details are murky.
Right.
But it really highlights that brutal reality
yeah,
of medieval warfare.
A stark reminder of the cost of these conflicts, both in terms of human life and the lasting impact on the region.
Absolutely.
Now, we know that Alexander's forces won the day, but was the battle on the ice really the decisive victory it's often portrayed to be?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
You see, while Russian historiography has traditionally emphasized the battle on the ice as this monumental triumph, like a crucial moment in repelling Western aggression, other interpretations offer a more nuanced perspective.
So not quite the end of the Crusades.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Historical events are rarely black and white.
Right.
The battle on the ice certainly had a significant impact on the region.
Yeah.
It solidified Novgorod's power for a time. However, it didn't completely stop the Teutonic Knights.
Right.
They continued to be a force in the region.
For centuries.
For centuries.
It's important to remember that history is not just a series of isolated incidents.
It's all connected.
Yeah, and this raises a really important question.
What's that?
How should we view the battle on the ice today?
Yeah.
Was it just a defensive action by by Novgorod protecting its territory?
Okay.
Or was it something more?
Like what?
A clash of civilizations.
Oh.
East versus West.
That's a good question.
I'm kind of leaning towards a bit of both, to be honest.
I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, the battle on the ice really serves as a window into the complexities of medieval politics.
Right.
The role of religion in warfare.
Of course.
And the enduring power of historical narratives.
It's a battle that continues to be debated.
Oh, yeah.
And reinterpreted.
Absolutely.
Which just goes to show that history is never really settled. It's like this living, breathing dialogue with the past.
Always evolving.
Okay, so we've really explored the events leading up to the battle. Yeah. We've analyzed the clash itself.
We really got into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and we've even discussed, like, the immediate aftermath. But what about, like, the long-term consequences of this battle? Yeah. How did this, like, frozen showdown shape the region's destiny?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's really where the debate begins.
Okay.
You see, the battle on the ice has become like this powerful symbol in Russian history.
Okay.
It's often portrayed as like this pivotal moment that helped preserve Russia's Orthodox identity against Western influence.
So the battle has really taken on a life of its own, evolving into something beyond just a military engagement.
Right. It's become a cultural touchstone. Woven into those national narratives.
Yeah.
To bolster ideas of Russian resilience and exceptionalism.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
A young prince defending his homeland.
Right.
Against these foreign invaders.
Yeah.
On a frozen lake.
Dramatic.
It's a story full of symbolism.
Yeah. No, I can totally see why this story has become so iconic.
Right.
It's practically made for a movie.
Yeah.
Didn't Sergei Eisenstein make a film about Alexander Nevsky?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
1938, Alexander Nevsky.
Oh, yeah.
It portrays the battle as this heroic struggle against Teutonic oppression. And, you know, it came out at a time when tensions were rising in Europe.
Right.
So the film really resonated deeply.
With audiences at the time?
Yeah.
So the battle's legacy kind of goes way beyond, like, just the history books.
Oh.
It's deeply embedded in Russian culture.
Is there?
But are there other ways to interpret the battle on the ice?
Yeah.
I mean, do all historians see it as this monumental victory?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Some historians would argue that its significance has been, like, overblown.
Right.
Perhaps even politically motivated at times.
Sure.
They point out that the Teutonic Knights, despite their defeat at Lake Peipus, continued to be a powerful force in the region.
So it might not have been, like, the decisive turning point that some narratives suggest.
Exactly.
Okay.
They emphasize, like, the battle's regional importance.
Right.
They acknowledge its impact on the power dynamics in the Baltic region.
Yeah.
But they really caution against overstating, like, its broader historical implications.
It's so fascinating how the same event can be interpreted in, like, such different ways, you know, shaped by national narratives, political context.
Absolutely.
Evolving historical perspectives.
It makes you wonder how much of history is actually objective truth versus interpretation.
Right.
That's the beauty of history.
Okay.
It's this ongoing dialogue with the past.
Yeah.
It's not about finding a single truth.
Right.
It's about exploring multiple perspectives and challenging those assumptions.
So after this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What should they really keep in mind as they navigate this historical maze?
I think the most important lesson is to recognize that history is complex.
Right.
Avoid those simplistic narratives.
Okay.
Embrace the nuances, the ambiguities, the competing interpretations.
Be a critical thinker.
Right.
Question the stories you're told.
Absolutely.
And dig deeper. Easier said than done.
Oh, yeah. It definitely takes effort.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the battle on the ice, that means, you know, considering that military significance.
Right.
Its cultural legacy, and its evolving role in shaping perceptions of Russian history.
It's a battle that continues to spark debate, fuel imagination.
Oh, yeah. And remind us that the echoes of the past really resonate deeply in the present.
And maybe that's the most intriguing aspect of it all, you know? The battle on the ice, fought on a frozen lake over 700 years ago.
Wow.
Still has the power to captivate us.
Yeah.
Challenge us.
Absolutely.
And make us reconsider our understanding of history.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the battle on the ice.
It's been a journey.
It really has. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final question to ponder.
Okay, hit me.
If the battle on the ice had ended differently, how might the course of history have been altered?
Wow.
Food for thought.
That's a big one.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
See ya.